Yes, so do I.
My Lords, may I begin by saying that I support Amendment 220. I endorse it completely. I have nothing further to say. Noble Lords have spoken with great eloquence and force. As the noble Baroness Chakrabarti has explained, my amendment, 221ZA, is a probing amendment designed to correct the terms of a subclause in Amendment 221 in case that amendment goes forward and in case the government is interested in it. Let me explain. I say at once that 221 in principle is a good amendment. If accepted, it would require the government to carry out a review of the age of criminal responsibility. I have no argument with that whatsoever. The issue I raise is with the list of factors to be considered by any such review, and in particular, the use of the word gender. The right word there should be sex. And I will explain. Age, the requirement is that the review, if one looks at 221, should take into account certain factors. It can take into account other ones, but these are the mandatory ones. Age, gender, and ethnic background. And my focus is on gender. Those of you who sat through the important debate on Monday night will have heard lengthy discussion of these terms and their use in legislation. I'll come back to that in a moment. But may I begin by saying that when I drafted my amendment rather hurriedly on the Thursday, I focused on the terms in the Equality Act, which will become obvious why I did that in a moment. And I used too many words. I just went back to it and lifted other factors to include them. And I'm quite satisfied now that the only words which need to go in, the proper course, is to remove the term gender and to substitute sex and gender reassignment. Now, I will now explain. The cohort, if this review were to take place, will be those under 18 and, for the large part, materially younger. One could call them children. Importantly, sex is established in statute. It describes physiology. It is not a social construct. It is easily identified, and it is listed and defined, as I shall explain, in the Equality Act. Gender, note, is not so defined. I say it for noble lords who weren't here on Monday evening or haven't studied the Act in detail. Section 11 of that Act says this: in relation to the protected characteristic of sex, A reference to a person who has a particular protected characteristic is a reference to a man or a woman. A reference to persons who share a protected characteristic is a reference to persons of the same sex. There is then further elaboration in section 212. That defines man and woman, in other words, the words we've just had explained. It says this: man means a male of any age, woman means a female of any age. So here we have it, all clearly defined. Sex is a physiological condition, and importantly, for the purposes of a review, it is an objective fact. It's not somebody's opinion, not what somebody identifies as. It is objective fact, and we're talking here about people under 18, usually much younger. And we all know also that sex is registered at birth. It's what's on the birth certificate. In the case of a very small number of people who might fall within the ambit of this review under 18, there may be those to whom the term gender assignment might apply. They will be few, but if it does apply within the meaning of the Act, that too will be a fact, not an opinion. That is because gender reassignment is also a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. Section 7, subsection 1 of that Act, defines it as follows. A person has the protected characteristic of gender assignment if the person is proposing to undergo, is undergoing, or has undergone a process or part of a process for the purpose of reassigning the person's sex by changing physiological or other attributes of sex. So gender reassignment, likewise, refers to a physiological process and does not include mere self-identification or opinion. Lastly, in case anyone were to ask, what about gender recognition certificates? They simply don't apply. You can't have one of those if you're under the age of 18. I say that so everybody knows where we are. So very simply, if there is to be such review, the mandatory, if those are the right words, consideration should be age, sex, gender reassignment, and ethnic background, but not gender. I commend this approach, and I wait with interest the Minister's response.